Hello, I'm going to give you a quick introduction into the topic of indexes and indicators. There are many different statistical and machine learning methods for combining items of data together. At the variable level, principal components analysis or PCA, factor analysis, cluster analysis, latent class analysis, structural equation models, all of which do slightly different jobs but are about bringing items of data together. At the file level, we have data linkage and other forms of integration and pooling, of pooling together different samples in order to create a bigger sample. Indexes and indicators are perhaps the simplest form of data combining methods. Unlike most methods on the previous slide, there is usually no statistical process underpinning the combination of variables. The combination is simply arithmetic. However, in common with those methods, the goals are twofold. First, we're aiming to simplify the data, reducing the number of variables that you have to consider in your models. Capturing some latent concept is the second point, and this is actually probably the more important. So where you've got a number of observed variables which might be about a certain topic or relate to a certain topic, and somehow combining them can get at that topic, the latent concept. The term indicator usually refers to a simple relationship between two variables, often in the form of a ratio. The term index usually refers to more complex calculations involving multiple pieces of data. Unfortunately, there are exceptions to this. For example, the body mass index would be an indicator according to this definition. Another definition states that indexes are a combination of multiple indicators, and there is no consistency basically. And it's best to assume the two terms are somewhat interchangeable. An example of a simple indicator would be GNP per capita, where you simply divide the size of a country's economy by its population. For an index, best demonstrated through examples. Supposing we have a data set with these three variables on: percentage of people unemployed, percentage of people with no educational qualifications, and percentage of people living in social housing. You could create a simple deprivation index by this formula. Deprivation is the sum of the three variables divided by 3, and then you have a measure of deprivation. At an individual level, you could do a similar thing. Is unemployed, has no educational qualifications, lives in social housing. At an individual level, measure is a binary, but you can apply the same basic formula. Add the three variables together and divide by 3 to get an index of deprivation at the individual level. Here's another more complex example. Annual income, value of house, maybe it's 0 if the person is renting. Value of investments. Now you could possibly create a wealth index using this formula, but note there's a problem here. The value of somebody's house will generally be much higher than their annual income, and the typical value of investments will be different again. So how would we do this? If adding them together, we would be very much more weighting the value of their house, and that would be somewhat arbitrary and would depend on inflation rates and so on. So how would we handle this? Well, one approach to this, which is often used, is called standardization. So house value and annual income are effectively on different scales, and if you standardize the variables, then it brings them all onto the same scales. So for continuous variables, you do this by subtracting the mean and dividing by the standard deviation. For ordinal variables, you might use the median and the interquartile range. It's a very simple calculation, and it creates variables which are measured essentially on the same scale. Well, they'll have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. This brings all of the variables onto the same scale. So this common notation for standardized variables is to prefix them with Z. So the formula on the previous slide becomes wealth index equals the sum of the standardized variables divided by 3. Okay, thank you, and hopefully that's given you a sufficient introduction into the concept of indexes and indicators.